Good morning. Um, Sorry to interrupt your conversation, but we need to get started. We have a lot this morning to get through. So happy May Day. Can't believe it's here. And next month is Pride, and can't believe is almost here. Welcome to First Friday Breakfast Club. I'm Byron Huff, FFBC president. My pronouns are he, him, his. I want to thank Lynn. Lynn is standing right there, one of the gateway servers for the uh, lovely May baskets, the little May baskets that are at your table. She made those for us. I mean, isn't that sweet? Gosh, they've been serving here for FFBC from Gateway like 8 years, I think. Yeah, so they're like regulars, and they like seeing the speakers too. Yeah, family. Yes, we're family. And also, you may be wondering why, if you noticed Bruce Gillespie's pictures at the front desk. Bruce was a longtime member of FFBC and served various roles on the board, including treasurer from 1997 to 2005. He always had a smiling face, was so welcoming, but he passed away this week. So, condolences to his family. At this time, I would like to offer any new FFBC attendee to introduce themselves. And I know we have a, a number of people. You don't have to, but just stand and say your name and say hi, whatever you'd like.
Hi, my name is Eric Croak, and I am also with Valley Point. I'm the artistic director there. And we are performing at Capital City Pride in June. So please come out and see some dance. I'm Todd Rose. I'm also with Valley Development and sort of here.
I asked Susan if this was her first time, and it really isn't in a way because she spoke a long time ago when she was, what was the title? Something of insurance, um, insurance commissioner. That's it. Yes. But now she's just Carl's wife. But oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Carl's not here. Others. Okay. Well, I know there are a few, but welcome and hope all of you can join us again. FFBC is an association of LGBTQ plus individuals and their allies formed in 1996, a 501c3, making your contributions tax deductible. This is FFBC's 30th year, and we have a new logo we're using this year for that, created by our Wade Peterson. Since formation, FFBC has awarded over 550,000, and with this year, well, that'll shoot higher for scholarships awarded annually to high school seniors who have done significant things to reduce homophobia and educate on LGBTQ issues in their schools and communities. April 30th was the deadline yesterday for this year's scholarship donations made through April 30th will be awarded next month at our June meeting. We're set to award a record 21 $3,000 scholarships. So, and that ups the record from last year. The record was 20. So we're on a trend. I hope it continues. We received a record 58 applications. That's compared to 37 last year. I mean, that's like astronomical. I mean, the committee struggled to get through. There's a lot of vetting. It's a process of the documents they have to submit. And there's a scoring process. It shows the continued need for our scholarships. They're awarded regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation, or other protected characteristics. This is all thanks to our generous donors who recognize the importance of the exceptional young students to reach their higher education goals. I hope you consider a donation for 2027. FFBC sends 2 emails a month. One is for our meeting and one is our newsletter. If you're not receiving them, just let us know or send an email to us from our website. You'll see our email, and we'll add you to our database. Next coming deadline for the newsletter. If you don't read that, I encourage it. We put a lot out there, thanks to Wade, but we put events from all LGBTQ organizations. We try to get it all in there. So you'll learn not only from the articles, but you'll learn things that are going on that you never realize how much is going on in the community. The deadline is May 25th. Anyone's welcome to submit an article. Be sure and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and now we're on Instagram. That's new. I'm still not used to using Instagram. I guess I'm too old. There is a video archive of past speakers out on YouTube as well, and you'll find links on our newsletter on our website. And we have a few announcements. Max, you want to make one?
Howdy, y'all. Can y'all hear me okay? Good. It's nice to see y'all. In case you're not familiar, I'm Max. I'm the executive director of One Iowa. I just have a couple of announcements. The first announcement is that we have our LGBTQ Leadership Institute application. It is live, and it will actually be live through the end of Pride Month. So if you know any LGBTQ leaders throughout the state of Iowa that would love to connect with other folks, we have cohorts of about 20 folks, and we've been doing this for about 8 years now. So I love the Institute, and I highly recommend you have folks apply. The second thing I wanted to shout out is that on May 12th, we have a Rooted in Action fundraiser for our 501c4 and PAC work. We are rounding out our LGBTQ legislative session and the work that we do there. And so we'll be talking about that, but we'll also be talking about the way that we're going to support pro-equality candidates during midterms elections, which is going to be a very, very important election season. So I hope you'll join us. More information is on our website. And then finally, tickets are live for the One Iowa Gala at the end of Pride Month as well. So I highly recommend that you join us, grab tickets, and fill out a friend stable as well. So I think that's all for me. Thanks for letting me make the announcement. Nice to see y'all.
Thank you, Max. And so, Rick Miller, I think you wanted to make a brief announcement also.
On Sunday, that's 2 days from today, the Pride Center is doing Glow, which is a drag brunch on Sunday from 11 to 2. You can still get tickets, but there's not many left. And we are actually doing two things. It's entertaining, but it's also where we give our 5 different awards throughout the community. And usually it has to do with somebody that's integrated with the Pride Center, but several of these nominees are actually in the room right now. I'm not allowed to tell you who they are until the event, but they're killing me. Come on Sunday.
That's great. Rick does amazing work for the Pride Center, and their book collection is amazing. We have personally donated a few books, and so let's see. Oh yes, Michael. There it is.
I don't have as loud of a teacher voice, so I'll come to the microphone. My name is Michael Eagle. I am not from Ballet Des Moines, although I wish I was. I'm from Des Moines Metro Opera, and I want to call your attention to a special performance and a composer that we are highlighting this coming summer season. I know many of you come to all 3 of our operas. Some of you may never have been. Some are trying to choose which one to come if you're going to come to one. So this morning I'm highlighting an opera, King Roger. There are postcards at your table, and it is shining a light on a work and a composer that's at their 100th anniversary. Karol Szymanowski was one of the most important composers composers, the most important composer of the 20th century in Poland at a time before, during, and after World War I, where he wrote this opera that is now 100 years old, premiered in Warsaw in 1926. Just recently, we were invited to the Polish Consul General's office in Chicago, to the Consul to the General to the U.S., to do some excerpts of this piece. And I would like to invite you all to come. It's a work that can be understood as a reflection of Szymanowski's own inner conflicts as a gay man navigating very conservative early 20th century society that left very little room for open expression of his identity. His letters and diaries reveal periods of isolation, turmoil, and a search for belonging, particularly in his travels to places like Sicily and North Africa, where he encountered many more fluid attitudes towards sensuality and beauty that deeply influenced his music. In King Roger, these struggles emerged symbolically as King Roger's fascination with a mysterious and beautiful exotic shepherd preaching freedom of expression and freedom of identity, and has a seductive, liberating presence that of both yearning and that awakens a sense of yearning and self-acceptance, but also the fear of King Roger losing his own moral stability. This opera presents a tension between the restraint and ecstatic freedom and mirrors Szymanowski's own life as an artist caught between public expression and private desires, making the work not just a mythic drama, but an encoded, deeply personal meditation on identity, repression, and the cost of living authentically. And it is 100 years old this year. It will be sung in Polish with English supertitles. I would love to see all of you there. And circulating around the room are some packets where you can see imagery and some of the singers and a picture of Mr. Szymanowski. So thank you. There are some postcards, so take those postcards with you, and we would love to see you at King Roger. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. One more, Wes, make a brief. There's a lot going on, so he's not going to announce everything.
I was going to say, I have way too much to tell you all of it, but happy Pride. It's almost here. It's already here for me. And I just want to encourage you to check our website, capitalcitypride.org/events. There's like 30 events already up on that site for everything you could possibly want, from trivia to Pride Night at the Cubs, Pride Night with the Menace, pet pageants, yoga, like it's just all of it. So just go and see the things that interest you, get signed up now, because it does help us if you sign up early. Thanks.
Thank you, Wes. I don't think I missed. Let me know if I missed anyone. I don't think I did. I think I got them. Okay. Yes. Also, Capital City Pride has created a community calendar specifically for LGBTQ plus events, and you'll find it on their website under resources, and then you'll see community calendar. And all LGBTQ organizations are welcome to put events there. FFB, we're putting ours there. There are others. We encourage other organizations to do that as well. And it's just one stop place to find out what's going on. Anyone can submit something. It just goes out, and then they make sure that it's appropriate and it gets posted. So you'll find a link also on our website as well. I think it's on the front page, right? Yeah, okay. That's Wade. He does our website. And that's all I have. Bill Jackson will introduce our speaker this morning.
Thank you, and good morning. I'm going to do something highly irregular. I'm here for one purpose. That's to introduce our guest and our speaker this morning. But I'm going to start off with a joke, and that really has nothing to do with David, nothing to do with our club. It will offend some of you. Some of you, you'll get a good laugh out of it. As we've been learning from the media, President Trump has been delegating some additional duties to Vice President Vance. Well, to me, that's kind of like shitting your pants and changing your shirt. Well, I was right. I shouldn't have told a joke. Dave Busick spent 43 years working in Iowa radio and television newsrooms as a reporter, anchor, and the last 30 years as news director of KCCI TV, the CBS affiliate here in Des Moines. He served as national board chair of the Radio Television News Directors Association. In 2014, he was Broadcasting and Cable Magazine's News Director of the Year. He was inducted into the Iowa Broadcasters Hall of Fame in 2018 and is a recipient of the Iowa Broadcast News Association's Jack Shelley Award. Dave graduated from the University of Missouri School of Journalism in 1976 and was immediately hired by Bob Wilbanks as a reporter at WHO Radio. If you will allow me a personal touch, I'm going to give you some details, which again, I probably shouldn't do. In 1969, or 61, I should say, I was a junior at Drake University and was hired as a part-time floor boy at WHO TV. Yes, a floor boy. They did not have women at that time. It didn't pay much, but it was enough for a few beers each week at Peggy's. I'll give you an example. $1 was all you needed for a date because you could buy a gallon of gas for $24.9, package of Camel cigarettes for $25. That left you with 50 cents for 5 draws at Peggy's. WHO TV was a non-union station, allowing me to learn the business, and was soon promoted to camera operator, lighting director, audio director, producer, and production manager. In early 1979, in the first year of his first term, Governor Bob Ray was looking for someone with broadcast business to strengthen his communication department. He hired me, and through 4 campaigns in 9 years, we are now in early 1979. WHO TV approached me and asked me if I would return as program director and shortly as TV manager. I agreed. My first directive was to buy a show for Prime Access. Prime Access is 6:30 at night. I decided on a show called PM Magazine, growing nationally for local stations. It required hiring 5, including co-anchors. I had my eye on a young reporter in WHO Radio, David Busick. But before I could get my ducks in order and get the contract signed, KCCI TV hired him as a reporter, soon to be anchor, and as I said earlier, news director for 30 years. He retired at the end of 2018. He is a member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, and his blog, Dave Busick on Media, appears on Substack. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a warm welcome to Dave Busick.
Thank you. It's good to be with you this morning. Good to see so many familiar faces, including my pastor, Greg Neal from Grace United Methodist Church, and his husband, Cade Rogers, and my longtime colleague, Steve Carlin at KCCI, and his wife, Lynn Rankin, and many others around the room. Since Steve is here, I will tell you that, so I spent 30 years as news director, and I have absolutely no funny stories from 30 years in management. You know, it's like let me tell you about the year that I really nailed the overtime budget. That's nobody really cares about this. All the fun stuff happens out in the field, particularly live television. And Steve knows where this is going. Steve was doing a report live from Visha up in Ames. You all remember what Visha was. And he was standing in this area of all the food trucks and all of that. And as he was doing his live report and wrapping it up, what he did not know was two young, probably fraternity brothers, came in about 20 feet behind him wearing trench coats, sneakers, and nothing else, and ran behind Steve's live shot and did one of these and ran off screen just as Steve was throwing it back to the studio to say, I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to go back there and get me some cheese on a stick. I lost my appetite for cheese on a stick that one night I was anchoring in the 80s with Kevin Cooney at 10 o'clock, and we had a great team. Pete Taylor on sports, Connie McBurney doing the weather. And it was February. Connie was over at the green screen doing the weather, and she said, it's going to be really cold tonight, probably a 3-dog night. In fact, tomorrow's going to be even colder, so you're going to want to bring your mittens. In fact, it's going to be so cold you probably want to bring 3 mittens, just like a 3-dog night. She comes over, sits down at the desk, looks at Kevin and me, and she says, where would you wear a 3rd mitten anyway? Kevin says, I don't know, your nose? Talk to Dave. My 14-year-old sense of humor was not thinking about my nose. That ends the penis portion of this. So I want to talk a little bit about media. I do have some things to say. And my column, Dave Buzik on Media, there's a clipboard around. Bill, if you would start that, you can sign up for it. I only write about once a week. It'll get into your inbox. And I'll say that what I try to write about is media literacy, helping people understand why reporters do what they do and what goes on behind most newsroom walls. But I also write about the intersection with politics, and sometimes I write just about politics. In fact, my most popular column that I've written in about 3.5 years was last year, right after the legislature took away civil rights from trans Iowans. And I just get so upset sometimes that I write about it. And that's been my most popular one. I wrote about the Iowa State House being a hate factory. And I had drew plumes of smoke coming up out of the domes and wrote intolerance and hate and discrimination, and how I used to be so proud to be an Iowan and and to be in the Iowa State House. And now I look at it and I just get really, really angry. So when I write about media, my columns do fine. When I spout off on politics, they really take off. So get very popular. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover this morning. I want to talk a little bit about competition in the media and the financial situation. I'm going to talk a little bit about how trust in the media has plummeted, and I'll have a few glimmers of hope for you at the end, and we want to leave a few minutes for questions. So first of all, let's talk about the financial situation. So the Des Moines Register at one time, and Jim Flansburgh is here, and his dad worked at the Register for a long time, had a Sunday circulation of 535,000. Any guesses what it is today? Not that. 1/10 of what it used to be. And of course, the internet bled off significant advertising dollars, first from ads going to ads going to Craigslist, and later due to people's retail habits moving online rather than shopping at brick and mortar stores. Yonkers, Sears, Dolls, all very good advertisers. They disappeared and they took all that advertising revenue with them. So rather than go into the red, newspapers laid off staffs. Here is the very latest research, which unfortunately only goes up to 2020, from Pew Research, very trusted nonprofit. Newspaper newsroom jobs were cut in half between 2008 and 2020. That's the red line there, from 71,000 jobs in this country down to 31,000. And of course, since then, it has only gone down. I wrote a column last year that showed the very latest research, more recent, as 2002, there were an average of 40 local journalists for every 100,000 Americans in this country. Today, that number is down to 8.2 local journalists per every 100,000 Americans. So many Americans today live in news deserts. This same research showed out of a total of 3,000 counties in the United States, fully 1,000 of them have not a single working journalist. So what does that mean for you? That means that you're not getting coverage that you used to get from the Iowa State House, from City Council, from School Board, from Polk County. Of course, we're lucky here in Polk County, but these folks living in news deserts, where do they get their news? Facebook, Instagram, and that is not good. Let me ask here, show of hands, who still takes the print edition of the Des Moines Register? Why? Because the Sunday morning only. Okay. Well, it is so badly out of date by the time it hits your front step that I just don't understand it. To me, it's like the Register has given up on the print edition of the Register. And the reason for that, and a lot of people don't know, is that the deadlines have moved so far earlier in the day. It used to be something could happen at the city council meeting. You could get sports scores from, say, tonight in tomorrow's Register. Now something could happen tonight, and it might not get in until Sunday's Register. And the reason for that, those early deadlines, is because of printing. Did you know that that nice printing plant that the Des Moines Register has down there by the airport now prints the Kansas City Star, and it is shipped 3 hours down the road to that major metropolitan area? The Minneapolis Star Tribune just recently started printing in Des Moines and is trucked 4 hours up the road to Minneapolis, a much bigger city than us. And the Columbia Daily Tribune is shipped 5 hours down to the home of my alma mater, University of Missouri. And so that just ratchets everybody's deadlines forward. And so as a result, we do not get the timely news in the print edition that we used to. There is a bit of good news on the journalism front, and that is that digital jobs, as you might expect, have gone from 7,400 in 2008 to 18,000 in 2020. Broadcast news jobs have held steady, but that is about to change. Let's talk about broadcasting a little bit. One of the reasons that TV has sort of avoided the pitfalls financially of newspapers is that video has value. Video is hot. Everybody likes video. And politicians have stuck with advertising on television. So every even-numbered year, they get a great amount of revenue coming in. But that world is about to change. Expenses for local stations have really skyrocketed. And a big part of that is network affiliate relations with their network. Those are all contracts. They're usually long-term, about 10 years. At one time, back in the day, and Bill, you'll remember this, NBC paid WHO in order to run their program and have access to WHO's audience so that they could sell their ads. Well, at some point about 20 years ago, that disappeared. Compensation was eliminated, and it was a significant part of all local stations' revenue. And then about 10 years ago, somebody at the networks came up with the idea of reverse compensation. I don't know what that means to you. That means to me, you got a big bill. And it has gotten even larger and larger, the amount that local stations have to pay to their networks in order to be an affiliate. And from the network standpoint, what that means is if you want to be, say, NBC, if you want NFL football, if you want Jimmy Fallon, if you want NBC Nightly News, you're going to have to pay us for it. And it has gotten so bad that some local stations around the country in non-political years are losing money, which is just astonishing to me, because I can remember the days when we made 30, 40, 50 cents on the dollar at our station. I had a boss, Paul, who used to say the only other businesses that make that kind of profit are drugs and prostitution. And owning a license was really, a broadcast license was a license to make money. Well, those days are long gone. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in local television. There is going to be this consolidation of ownership. At one time, up until a couple of weeks ago, for decades, the Federal Communications Commission, the federal government, had a cap that said that no owner of television stations, like Hearst, which owns stations all over the country, could reach more than 39% of the households in America, because they didn't want somebody monopolizing the business. They also could not own more than one of the top 4 rated stations in the market. Well, that cap apparently is gone because Trump's FCC and the FCC commissioner has just approved a merger between 2 giant companies. Nexstar, based in Texas, owns 200 stations. Tegna owns 65 stations. And so they've approved Nexstar buying Tegna, which is going to give them 265 stations around the country, which will reach 80% of households. Why should you care? Well, I think you should care because that means that jobs are going to disappear, probably local journalism jobs. Here are the top 5 rated stations in this market. Hearst owns KCCI, Nexstar WHO, Tegna WI. Sinclair, not a very good operator, owns KDSM, and then Tegna also owns KCWI. So if these stations merge, you're going to have WHO and WI owned by the same company. If I was working at WI, I'd be very worried about my job right now because they're the 3rd rated station, not very highly rated. So it's highly likely that jobs are going to disappear there. It could come in any number of ways. It could be that they would just close the news department and have WHO simulcast their newscast on WI. It could be that the anchors would stay, but the reporters and photographers for WHO would feed in. It's any number of things that could happen. In Indianapolis recently, one station's owner bought the ABC affiliate, laid off the entire newsroom, and the very next day, the buying station's anchors were anchoring the news on the station that they just bought. So I'm going to skip ahead because time is fleeing. Let's get to my second main point here. Trust in the media. Trust in media has plummeted. Gallup in October of last year reported trust in the media is at a new low, just 28% of Americans expressing a great deal or fair amount of trust in newspapers, radio, and television to report the news fairly and accurately. Meanwhile, 7 in 10 adults say they have not very much or no confidence in the media. So that's the green. The green line is trust in the media. The blue line is folks who do not trust the media. When Gallup first started asking this question back in the 1970s, it was about 70% of Americans had trust in the media. The divide is even worse now among Republicans, with only 8% of Republicans saying that they trust the media. Did I put in how many? 92% say they do not trust the mainstream media. So how did we get here? Well, number one, conservative media came to the fore sometime in the 1990s, and you had Rush Limbaugh on every station, every market in the country, and Fox News on cable TV preaching a message against the mainstream media, or as Rush called us, the lamestream media. Thus, conservative audiences have just been hit over and over and over again with how bad the media are, and that the main media leans left. This talk is not meant to be political, but we have a leader of the free world who has been beating up the media as a part of his regular persona and campaign stands. He files suits against media companies. He calls reporters the enemy of the people, a phrase that really has its roots in Nazism. He berates reporters regularly, calling them to their face horrible people. He did so as recently as Sunday night to Nora O'Donnell, who read part of the shooters at the manifesto at the White House Correspondents Association. And I think the media needs to take some of the blame ourselves. For too long, we have not done enough to counter this anti-media message. We can do things that I think build trust in what we do, showing our work. How do we get the stories? What steps did we go through? Admitting errors quickly and correcting them. But no matter what we do, it's just not easy to overcome this fire hose of hate that is coming from some of our leaders. And I'll just say this one more political comment, that if I were holding a dinner to honor the First Amendment, like they did last week in Washington, with the head table having a banner over it that says celebrating the First Amendment, the last people that I'd be inviting would be Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Kash Patel, and Stephen Miller. That's me. I attended some of those dinners, and it's quite weird to see a Hollywood star and the President of the United States over here. Third and final point, I'd like to leave it on a note of optimism before we get to questions. I've painted a pretty bleak picture here, but there are some good things that are happening. I wrote a column a couple of weeks ago about a newly created position in Indianapolis called a public editor. The Poynter Institute, which is a nonprofit that supports journalism around the country, got foundation funding enough to hire a public editor who is independent and is going to sit there and look at the various newspaper stories, television, and radio stories in town and write analysis of how they do. So if If you have a complaint, if you lived in Indianapolis, which you don't, you could send it to the public editor, and her name is Tracy Compton, would look at that coverage and then write an analysis of whether they think that she thinks it was a good idea or a bad idea. And some of what she's doing is explaining to folks in Indianapolis kind of how the media works and helping to improve their media literacy. So they only have enough funding for an 18-month experiment. Let's hope that it takes off. To counter the retrenchment in newspaper coverage, there are a number of digital startups now around the country. There's one really exciting one happening in Ames. I'm sorry, I just keep looking at my watch, make sure we don't run out of time. The Ames Daily Tribune, which you worked at, Jim, right? For how long? 4 years, was a terrific newspaper owned by Michael Gartner and others. Guy by the name of Art Cullen was the editor, and they just did a terrific job. I think Michael won a Pulitzer Prize writing an editorial at the Ames Tribune. Well, what happened? Gannett bought it, same owners of the Register, and they have just emptied the doors for reporters. They have a very small newsroom now. So folks in Ames really missed having a strong newspaper. They describe it as kind of a series of concentric circles. First, the Tribs stopped covering City Hall and county government. And then they stopped covering business. And then they stopped covering people doing good things in the community. And thankfully, Ames is a powerful community, a community filled with powerful people and wealthy people. And they formed a nonprofit, and they've started an online newspaper called Ames Voice. They have 2 contract part-time reporters. You can be a volunteer for the Ames Voice, a volunteer reporter. They'll train you how to go cover the school board, what questions to ask, how to report it, and how to write it. And it's taken off. They're selling advertising, and so far they're making it. So that's really a good development. Then there are a lot of good digital newspapers here in Des Moines. Axios, I particularly like Iowa Capital Dispatch, which is it's a nonprofit. It's run by Kathy Obradovich, formerly of the Register. And they've got this guy named Clark Kaufman, who just spends all of his life digging through government records and finding incredible stories. I just think it's an absolute must read. And lastly, an option for you is paid media on things like Substack, where I write my column. It is free. It absolutely always will be free. There's a paid option for folks who want to support it. And when they do that, I donate all of my proceeds to the Iowa Freedom of Information Council. But there are people on there, thank you, and they do really good work. There are people on there like Heather Cox Richardson. I don't know how many people here read Heather every morning. She's making $5 million a year. Which is pretty astonishing. But what's interesting about this is that you have some legacy media types who have left their legacy media organization, like Jim Acosta at CNN now has hundreds of thousands of people that are reading him on Substack. Scott McFarlane, recently of CBS News, which is another whole topic we can talk about, recently left, and he's up to like 600,000 subscribers already. So that's always the Iowa Writers Collaborative has about 90 writers in it now. They're all over the state. You get a really good perspective on things that you're just not reading. Julie Gamick, who started it, her goal was, since we hardly get any editorials in the Des Moines Register anymore, on Thursday and on Sunday, maybe, was to, at a time when editorial voices are retrenching, to give access to more. So that sort of leads us into the destruction of CBS News, and we can talk about that if you're interested, but I thank you for your attention. I feel like I was talking really fast, sorry. Who has questions? We'll go in the back of the room.
Have you seen them edit and cut out stories and people left?
Yeah, so by her, he means Barry Weiss, who was sort of a right-wing digital person, came in as the news leader at CBS News. And I have seen them really tone down coverage. I've seen important developments that Donald Trump would not like end up being a 12-second story, which really should have been developed more on the CBS Evening News. But the God's truth is, I can't give you an honest answer because I'm boycotting CBS News, not the local station KCCI. But I am boycotting them. The one except anything on CBS, I'm boycotting. The one exception is Stephen Colbert, and now he's going away. But Colbert has been my, sort of my nightly therapy, keep me out of the therapist's office because he's funny as hell. But it's just awful. I mean, who would have thought that the news division of Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, on and on and on, Leslie Stahl would be taken over so quickly by a certain political faction in this country. And it's really, really sad, and it's got awful. And now they are about to get their hands on CNN as well. Now, they say they're going to let it maintain its editorial independence, but I'll believe it when I see it. James.
I abandoned the newsroom more than 20 years ago because the cell phone was coming up. Going forward, if you were still in the newsroom, what would you be telling your reporters on how to navigate these political waters? Because if we tell the truth, we're going to be accused of fake news. And it's very critical for
It's harder now than it's ever been, but it's always been hard because the national cable news networks clearly skew one way or the other. And I think it's been easy for lazy people to take that same broad brush and paint local journalists with that. I can tell you in all my years, I say what I think now, but I kept my mouth shut for 43 years, as did Steve. And I was trained to hit the ball down the middle of the fairway and tried really, really hard. But we've always been accused of being left-leaning. And the fact of the matter is, probably, if everybody was honest in news, they would lean left. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Journalists tend to be better educated. They tend to have jobs and have some money and tend to lean left. But we've been trained to keep that out. What I would say is, particularly at a time right now when there's one-party control in this state, journalists are supposed to do hard stories on the people in power. You're supposed to hold their feet to the fire. And you look around, there's not many Democrats that you can hold accountable, other than Rob Sand, who's the only statewide elected official right now. So Republicans are going to understandably be in for some criticism and for some tough reporting. And what I would say, they would say, well, you never treated Chet Culver that way. And I would say, you were not paying attention if you didn't see our coverage of Chet Culver. It was pretty darn tough. Would you agree, Steve? So, I think whoever is in power should expect to have difficult stories done about them. So I think all you can do is try your very best to do good journalism, tough stories, fair stories, and let the chips fall where they may. You may get credit for it. You may not, but it's got to be harder than ever right now. I used to answer the phone like between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There would always be angry white guys who'd been listening to Rush, and he would get them worked up. And instead of calling Rush or WHO Radio, they'd call me because they knew I would answer the phone. So I'd always have to talk these guys down. Nothing against angry white guys. I am one. So we'll go here.
So November's going to be here soon.
Yep.
Hopefully, I'm guessing most of us are very hopeful. What can we do as people that aren't in the media to help support better coverage of what's actually happening versus this fake news debacle?
Were you able to hear the question? What can non-media people do to kind of help boost journalists and make sure that there's fair coverage? Well, one thing you can do is start to subscribe and vote with your wallet for some journalism outlets. I saw research last week that said fully 88% of Americans have not paid a dime for local news coverage in the past year. Now, that's just wrong. People want it to be free. Information wants to be free. I understand that. But journalism takes money. And so find somebody that you trust. I'm a big fan of the New York Times. They're not local, but boy, they do terrific coverage right now. They're doing absolutely essential coverage, I think. Must read right now to read. But and as much as the Register has changed, imagine what this community would be without the Des Moines Register. So please open your pocketbook and subscribe to a few that you support who you think are doing a good job. I think that's one thing. Also, just give feedback. If you see something you think is wrong, call that organization, email that organization and ask why and ask for an explanation. We like to hear from people, both good and bad. And if we screw something up, we want to hear about it. So just let them know that you're out there and that you're paying attention. Other questions? We'll go here and then to Bill.
The economy that we've experienced through freedom of press will be something that we'll be able to claw back after we move through what we're presently.
I think there's a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I think there's a lot more even than freedom of the press that we're going to have to claw back. Integrity in government, putting competent people in charge in government. I mean, I don't know. We've never been through a situation like this. I heard a speaker, Michigan Senator Elizabeth Slotkin, a couple of weeks ago, and here in Des Moines, and she said, don't think this is the worst time we've ever been through. We've been through tough times before, and that really is true, but we've never been through a time like this. And I don't know how we're going to be able to claw it back. I think the media trends are all very negative. All I know is that people need to, meaning all Americans need to pay attention. I think that there are far too many Americans who just don't have any of the issues that are going on their radar screen because they are not reading. Democracy requires informed citizenry. And I think there are too many of us who are not us. I'm reading hours a day to the point where I'm going crazy. But people need to read and invest. Byron, how are we doing? One more, or are we done? One more question. We'll go to Bill.
Could you touch on the recent television where the owners did a newscast for Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, and we're going to let the weather team go?
Yeah. Yeah. So the Cedar Rapids Waterloo television market's a little smaller than Des Moines, and they have one station, NBC affiliate in Waterloo, two in Cedar Rapids, the CBS and ABC affiliates. The NBC station up in Waterloo is owned by Allen Media Group, which also happens to own the Weather Channel down in Atlanta. And they were going to let go all of their local meteorologists and just do the weather from Atlanta. People went ballistic, and so they pulled the plug on that plan. In Cedar Rapids at the CBS affiliate, KGAN, which used to be WMT, legendary television news station, the owner of that company now, which is Sinclair, I think, don't quote me on that, recently did away with all their anchors, Steve, and they are doing an anchorless newscast. So the reporter's out in the field, introduces her story, does the story, wraps up her story, and then the next reporter in the field takes it. Absolutely, and it's all sort of pre-recorded and edited together long before it hits air. What they're going to do during emergency weather or breaking news is yet to be determined, but it's just a cheapening of the product, and it's not going to do anything to help claw back what we've talked about. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, that was interesting and sad. It's sad in many ways what's going on, but who knew that media was so penis focused? We learn something every day. Misinformation is growing with the huge shifts in how we consume news. We all need to be cautious about sharing news without doing some vetting. All this change is truly a threat to a healthy democracy. History shows us what happens when a population loses trust in media and succumbs to misleading and false information. Hitler. With all of this bleak news, it's heartening to hear there are some innovative developments to address the loss of traditional sources. We need people like Dave to help us understand and interpret the news. I'm new to Substack, but it appears it's becoming an important outlet. You may find Dave's Substack worth your time and money. Okay, upcoming speakers next month is a big month. And not only Pride, but June 5th, FFBC will have our scholarship awards. If you've not attended, it's huge. We will have people sitting back in that room. I mean, It's a big event, RSVP required, because we literally have name tags and assigned seats. It's the only way to make it work because it's a big event for this small space. And our speaker will be Zach Russ, Iowa Safe Schools, so executive director. So another reason to come. Also in July, we will not have a regular breakfast meeting. July 11th, which is a Saturday, or sorry, a Friday, right? Yeah. We will have a donor membership appreciation party at 6:30 p.m. at the temple in the rehearsal room, which is next to the ballroom. That's the building that Centro's in. Join us to help celebrate FFBC's 30th year. So go to our website, go to the LGBT community calendar to see more on upcoming speakers. We actually have quite a few already booked out for the year. I hope all of you can join us again. Invite your friends. Thank you and have a great weekend.